Happy New Year, players, gamers, and critters! I am Master Mimic, and welcome back to another episode of Roaring D20s, my little show where I sit here and talk about all things D&D related. So, 2021, a time for marvels, a culture event, whatever. Here's hoping that things go a lot better than it did last year. I thought that, hey, given that this is going to be the first episode of the new year, I thought I'd, get something off of my chest. A dark horror story going back to my time as a GM for my long career of GMing. I wanted to talk about my first instance of encountering a character that was purposely made to be as difficult as possible. Basically, the player had let me dial it back a little bit. So basically what ended up happening is I was able to get my hands on the core book for a superhero D20 game called Mutants and Masterminds. I don't know if I might have mentioned it in a previous episode or not. Who knows? Sorry, I'm not completely done with my cup of coffee yet, so deal with me. Running with Mutants and Masterminds. Basically, it was, like I said, a superhero game where the purpose of it was you would make your own superheroes and then you just go off and have, all kinds of Avengers-style shenanigans. Obviously, this is kind of more easier said than done, but whatever. So I had always been the player when it came to this this setting or this book. So I was actually excited to run my own game. I even kind of went out of my way to tell everyone this is what I want to do next. When the next campaign is done, our next adventure is done, I wanted to run this. And I got really excited about it. I spent about basically 2 weeks of free time just basically building up this custom adventure where the planet was okay. Basically, I'll be honest, I kind of ripped off Brainiac from Superman, because basically an alien artificial intelligence with an army of brainwashed superheroes from other planets invaded the Earth and was basically grabbing superheroes, and including like the best ones, like this universe's version of Justice League. I think I actually adapted it into a piece of pop culture for Darklands called the House of Heroes. They swooped in and they just start grabbing these heroes, and so basically what the idea was is that the players were these like C-list heroes who kind of had this opportunity to step out of the shadow of the greats and do something something heroic, something that would make them legendary. So my instructions to them was basically, you guys aren't at the top of your class. You guys aren't the heavy hitters. You're no supermen. You're not even super boys. You're just kind of, you're the tier below Teen Titans is how I described it. So they, unfortunately, I can't quite. I remember the party consisted of. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to really rack my brain here. I think one of them was a character with ice powers. I'm just going to call them Frostbite. And Balcasaurus was playing, and he played a character called Silverback, who was this big, like, burly, kind of like a Hulk kind of guy, but he was just basically an extremely muscular man, but he was also intelligent and soft, like a gentle giant type. And he got his name from the fact that he was wearing a suit, like an actual suit, like like a dress shirt and all that. And the coat was bleached on the back with this big old white patch. And so somehow that ended up being called Silverback. And I guess he liked it. Well, then I had another player. We'll call him Cooper. Cooper sent me a character sheet that he said it wasn't done. So I was like, okay. Basically, he was described as he was kind of like a super soldier type thing, a la Captain America, where he was being built as like in case the House of Heroes ever rebelled, that kind of thing. Uh, he was the contingency plan for in case things got out of hand with the House of Heroes. The best way I could describe it is if anyone is familiar with the world of Superman Red Sun, it is like the Americans' version of Superman, the Bizarro Superman, like that interpretation. That was basically the idea he was going for, and I actually really liked it. But he was quick to say, but this guy isn't perfect. He's not, top of his game or anything, whatever. For the sake of anonymity, I'm just gonna call this guy Clark because that's the name of Superman, and I personally despise Superman. I'm not gonna get into that, but anyway. So Clark was really, really powerful, but he still had like some weakness. He still was getting there. I was like, all right, fine. You were basically I think his name was Beyond Man, like the Superman of this world, Beyond Man. He was basically an imperfect copy of him that was still, growing in power or whatever. I was like, yeah, sure, fine. Like I said, you guys are C-list heroes, or I say heroes with quotes because they were more morally ambiguous, but whatever. So then they were done with their character sheets, and we all got together one day. I was actually really excited. I think we actually ended up meeting at Cooper's house, ironically. And they all got together. They put down their character sheets, and then Cooper told me something I was actually pretty shocked by. He told me that he was finished making Clark and had gone out of his way to, quote, F me over. Basically, he described this character as a big middle finger to me. I don't understand. Like, I know at that point, Cooper and I weren't always seeing eye to eye. He was a GM, but I was also a GM, and every now and then we would kind of butt heads when either one of us was a player. We had our disagreements, but I always thought that, it hadn't escalated to the point where one or the other was trying to sabotage someone's campaign. But unfortunately, that's apparently where we were. Cooper had made Clark specifically to screw over my game. I looked over this guy's, his stuff. He was basically impossibly strong. He was resistant to basically any form of damage I could throw at him. See, that's the problem with Mutants and Masterminds. It is, at least in the edition we were running, it was painfully easy to break your character. I mean, we're talking like level 5, you can fight demons competently. Or at this rate, I think they were like level 7 or something. But this, like I said, level 7, this guy is untouchable. He can also fly. He also has, he was basically Superman, but that's the thing, though. I did not like Superman, and this character was created, like I said, as a big middle finger to me, both in the way of now I have a Superman-type character in my game, and he's been built in a way to screw me over. So I just kind of went, you know what, I don't want to start anything here. I'm not, I was, like I said, I was, this was just a part. This was an early part of my GMing experience. I had never encountered a scenario like this where I had a player specifically make a character to hurt me. So I just, again, Cooper has been my friend. He still is my friend. So I didn't want to, I didn't want to say no. I didn't know how to deal with this. I decided, whatever. We're just gonna run with it and just, cross my fingers and toes and hope that this goes well. Long story short, it didn't. I ended up having to, because I had a lot of things to throw at them. Like I said, a lot of these enemies were superheroes who were brainwashed, and so they would send down basically like I would say like the equivalent of Thor. There'd be like Star Lords and all that, like coming down, blasting them with lasers and throwing lightning and fire and stuff. There were sorcerers. Excuse me. Sorcerers summoning demons, and not one of them could land a hit on this guy. And I remember just asking Cooper, okay, what the heck is your problem? Why did you make this guy? And he just kind of threw up his shoulders and was just like, hey man, I mean, you said we could play superhero, so fine, I made a superhero. This is my superhero. If you don't like it, well, you should have been more specific. He said something along those lines. Obviously you can imagine I was pretty perturbed, I was pretty upset. But I didn't want to just slap him on the wrist. How dare you? I didn't want to be that GM. So we ended the game, and I ended up basically telling. I called or texted Cooper, and I told him, "Hey man, Clark is too much. Clark is basically like he's basically like Superman hanging out with Robin and the Hulk. I mean, well, like, okay, we'll say not the Hulk, but the Thing. And it was just like they could do their thing, but then here's this guy who could just basically take all the beatings, who can take all the hits. He puts himself directly in the middle of this horde of enemies and can just get wailed on by like 15 different enemies without getting a scratch on him. And I said, you need to do something. This isn't fun. And he says, well, I made him already, and I'm not gonna do that. So I said, at the very least, give him magic vulnerability. Because I told him, I know you're basing this guy off of Superman, and Superman is vulnerable to magic. So could you at least do me that courtesy? But, so he was doing that. But in the back of my mind, I'm going, you know what? I need to make sure that my game doesn't get screwed over again. So I had to really go back into the drawing board and like, okay, Clark is the creation of the U.S. government to fight the House of Heroes if the House of Heroes ever rebelled. He is an imperfect, not a clone, but he's an imperfect creation, meant to counteract Beyond Man. And so I went, okay, what if these government officials somehow created a clone of Clark that was basically basically what their contingency plan for if Clark ever went rogue. And according to Cooper, that's basically exactly what he did. He was created as this kind of, regulator, this enforcer. Instead, Clark went off on his own and, rips out a tracking chip from the back of his neck because, he can heal. And, that was it. They lost him. So I created a character who was basically the idea was the U.S. government wanted to bring Clark back into their ranks because now we have this full-on alien superhero invasion going on, and they have this guy who's still a rogue. The government, they wanted to bring him back, bring him to heal so that he could work with them again. So they unleash their contingency plan, a character named, I believe I named him Roland. Now, Roland was essentially, I kind of imagined him as, it'd be essentially if there was a character Superman, I mean, there probably is, but again, I don't really follow Superman lore that much. It'd be essentially if there was a supervillain in his rogues gallery who was made of pure kryptonite. That was basically everything he did. If he even touches Clark, he basically removes all of his powers, reduces him to a normal person. This is done with, I described as nanomachines going in, and they go and they find the cells that are affected by whatever super soldier serum that was used to make him, and they suppress it and reduce him back to the... Sorry, that was my phone. I forgot to mute it. Anyway. What was I gonna... Okay, so yeah, so it was gonna go in and basically suppress these cells and make him a normal person. Then the next game came around. We all met up, and so I asked Cooper. I said, "All right, did you make the changes I asked?" And he says, "Yeah, but I gave him mild magic vulnerability." Essentially, what that basically means is if he is hit with magic, it was something like he only takes half damage from it. And but then he also had other things in place, like for example, unless fire was specifically magic, he couldn't be affected by it. And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, so even then, with getting half damage from magic, I'm not just gonna start throwing, I'm not start throwing like freaking Doctor Strange at them, at every turn, I'm not gonna do that. So I decided, all right. So it's obvious Cooper is not gonna coordinate with me. He is very adamant about he wants to make this campaign as difficult for me as possible. He does not want to listen to me. He does not want to play, he doesn't want to play fair. So therefore, I decided that this game would be the one where I unveiled Roland. So when it came down to it, they're fighting this next big battle. I kind of set it up as like, okay, whatever. Another wave of heroes that they are battling. But of course, like I said, Clark is just going boom, 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 knocking guys down with like one or two hits. And then I described how there's a single figure floating in the sky, a dark silhouette whose details have been obscured by the sun behind him. Immediately, Cooper sends Clark up there. He says, I'm just going to run up and just punch this guy in the face. And he does. He lands a solid blow on this guy. Until the guy then is able to succeed in a grappling check, and he grabs onto his wrist. And I described how suddenly Clark feels, for the first time in many, many years, this mortal weakness. His strength wanes from him. That grip on his arm is suddenly like iron. He can't break from it. He is even losing his ability to fly. He's now no longer, being hovering in the air in front of this guy. He's now being held up by this guy. And then he looks over and sees this bearded face, eyes burning with the lust for retribution, before the man grits his teeth and says, "We meet again, Clark." And that was when I introduced Roland. Roland I described as he was the runner-up for this experiment. Clark and Roland had competed up to this point to see who could become, the subject, the super soldier of this project. And Clark had actually managed to be selected over Roland, which had caused only aggressive hatred from Roland, as he felt like his friend had betrayed him. I mean, they were soldiers in war, and they fought, they were brothers in arms, and then he gets hamstrung by this guy. And so Roland instead signs up for this other project, which is even more risky, because now essentially you're being it's like creating the devil to fight God, is how I described it. And so Roland underwent this transformation that every ounce of him was built to fight Clark, to make him mortal again, to knock him down a peg. And at that point, Cooper just slammed down his hands on the table and said, the point of playing a superhero game is to have fun making overpowered superheroes. And I looked at him, I said, no. The point of playing a superhero D20 game is to have fun with players at the table playing superheroes. As a team, as friends. You're not trying to screw one over, you're trying to have fun. And if this is your idea of fun, well then I have to step up as a GM so that it is more balanced for everybody. And so, all of a sudden, Clark is the weakest member of the team. And At that point, though, Roland then gives him a letter and drops him, and this forces Silverback to save him. And the letter basically reads that Clark has to return to the lab where he was created in order to get the injections again that will restore his powers. That was basically what they wanted all along. They didn't want him dead; they wanted him under their control. And so this team has to divert back to this lab so that Clark can get powered up again. Meanwhile, Clark is just kind of watching from afar. And at this point, though, Cooper had basically completely shut down. Uh, he wasn't really role playing much. He wasn't talking very much. I mean, he would describe what he was doing, but that was it. Like, I could tell this guy was ready just to storm out. I'm thankful that we weren't playing at his house because I probably would have been kicked out at that point. But whatever, you know. So, long story short, the government did return his powers, but they basically had a tracking chip planted in him that Roland could follow. And so eventually, with Roland following, that's kind of like them trying to I think the party Clark managed to convince them to try and beat him, only for Roland to again take his powers. And then he just dropped a syringe with a serum on him, like, all right, you want to go again? Let's go again. I'm just going to take it away from you. Thank God I had this syringe with the serum on me because I knew you were going to try to kill me. And so they eventually, I'll just, fast forward real quick. The heroes would eventually storm the spaceship that this alien artificial intelligence was on. They had basically rallied together a resistance movement of all these heroes and just charged it, And what was actually really cool was while Clark was distracted fighting off these aliens, Silverback had managed to save this girl who had the ability. Basically, she was like what is her name? It's the telekinetic girl, the one with the green hair from One Punch Man. Anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about. She had incredible telekinetic powers, but the problem is she was a little girl and was actually, long story short, she basically was raised to suppress her powers, but it was because Silverback was being this nurturing mentor like presence to her that she ended up helping them destroy the artificial intelligence by using her telekinesis because they were fighting the central computer. But I described that the metal itself was completely impenetrable. Like even powered up Clark couldn't dent it. And so the idea was that they had to figure out a way to basically cut this guy's wires and leave him destroyed basically. So they got this little girl again, like I said, because Silverback was being so nurturing to her, and you don't have to be afraid. Let it go, don't hold it back anymore. So she uses her powers to rip the wires under the metal, because as Balcasaur said, so are the wires also indestructible? And I just, oh crap, okay. So they basically just ripped the wires of this alien computer and they destroyed him. And because of that, all the heroes that were under his control were now freed. So they're all flying around, they're beating back the robots or the alien warriors that were, actually not brainwashed, and these guys had saved the day. And Silverback had taken this girl as like a protege, took her back to her parents, but I think it was like I think I took if I remember right, I took a cue from the X-Men series. Like if anyone remembers the old 1990s cartoon series, the one on Fox Kids, they were basically like Jubilee's parents who were like afraid of her, but because of her powers, and they wanted her gone to be sent away. And so basically they're like, oh no, get her out of here, we don't want her. We gave her up so the robots would leave us alone. So they basically Silverback took her as a protege, as an apprentice. I don't know really what happened to Frostbite, honestly. I'm so sorry. But I know Clark basically it was described that he disappeared, and he was saying he was up in Antarctica or something, like trying to become like he said he fled to Antarctica, but then in the later on, like when he's describing what happened, he said that Clark flew up into space with the hope of fighting greater and greater threats to become more powerful, possibly more powerful than Roland, so that he would return to Earth and the two of them would battle on in this apocalyptic clash where Clark would finally defeat Roland and, prove that he was the greatest of them all. And that was basically how the game ended. I'm happy the game actually ended, that it didn't just completely fall apart, but it wasn't fun. Like, it wasn't really that fun for me. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy that my players were able to learn things, or basically able to strategize. They were able to work together. Silverback is, like I said, I remember him fondly. Not that I don't remember Frostbite fondly. It's just I don't even know if Frostbite was in this game or if he was in another Views of Masterminds game. I'm so sorry. But anyway, what I mean to say is this was one of those games where there was always that ever heavy presence of me waiting for Cooper to say or do something that would basically screw over my game. And it was only from the threat of Roland that I was able to keep him down. Granted, I am happy that Cooper would eventually take this threat of Roland, and instead of flipping the table, ripping up his character sheet, screw this game, and storm out, he instead used that as a motivation for his character to get stronger, so that he wouldn't be under the tether of the U.S. government. That's okay. Sorry, I just remembered. He originally did fly to Antarctica to go into exile, but then I mentioned that the U.S. government would still know he is there because of the tracking chip, so he said he flew up to space to fight people. Okay, sorry, it's all coming back to me. But yeah, so it was I liked the game because I actually ended up having a really cool twist in there, and according to Balcasaurus, to this day, it's still one of his favorite twists in a game, period, if not his favorite, and that actually felt really nice for me. But again, it's this feeling a GM gets when a player is outright trying to get them. So there was always tension. There was, whenever I would have a sequence where Clark and Roland, I keep wanting to say Roland. I think I like saying that name more because I hate Clark so much. The Superman, also the character, but also a Superman. But yeah, where Clark and Roland would be conversing, then a little bit of animosity got through. Like Clark would mention something like, you were always just jealous of my strength. You were always just second best to me. And I couldn't help but feel a little bit like that. It was kind of more or less directed at me. Like I said, we didn't have the greatest of relationships. I mean, we do now. Cooper and I get along very, very well. Funny enough. But it's just up to that point, he and I were kind of butting heads. So I guess basically what the story is really trying to get at is, no GM is ever going to come out unscathed when it comes to either difficult players or overpowered characters. I know I already did a little video regarding how to deal with OP characters, OP items, or whatever, giving a character an overpowered item that makes them overpowered. But this is more of like an overpowered character and how to deal with it. I mean, looking back now, like as I'm sitting here and I'm talking about it, obviously I could have done this a whole lot better. I should have had more of a spine. Should have, just straight up told Cooper, no, we're gonna start the game, but here's an eraser, here's a pencil. You're redoing this. I'm not having a Superman, a Superman Plus in my game without there being some serious restrictions. Because, like I said, you are not A-list, you are C-list. So it doesn't make sense that we'd have a character so powerful and yet he's still a C-list character, Like, I think at this point, Clark was more powerful than Beyond Man. Like, it's just looking back at it, because like I said, Beyond Man was basically this universe's version of Superman, but even Superman at least had vulnerability to magic, while Clark only had a minor weakness to it. So yeah, looking back at it, yeah, I should have just told him no. I should have just handed him back his character sheet and been like, no, you're not playing this. I know at that point, I think it was because we were at his house, and obviously if things didn't go right, he could just kick us out or cancel game night, whatever. I just wanted to play because I had been working on this for so long. But the thing is I allowed my hesitation to basically bring this character into my game, and all the shortcomings that came from that, all the stress, all the hair pulling anxiety that came from it. Well, I can't really even say anxiety, it's more frustration, but whatever. It was all because of me. Because I didn't deal with the situation properly. I mean, creating Roland was my way of kind of like, well, I already let this guy in the game. I can't just, cross him out, white him out and just, all right, fine. Clark's not in the game anymore. He's already been established. He's in the game. He's part of the universe. He's part of the team. I'm not about to be that bad of a guy. By just telling him basically, I'm just going to retcon the whole opening and just say, okay, yeah, Clark's not a part of the game. So Roland was my answer to that. Granted, again, like I said, I wish I had done that better too. Maybe if I had made Roland less of a enraged character, because Roland was a personification of my frustration. Of all the, when I was walking home after game night, all the, grit teeth rants I was doing, just what the heck, So Roland was a personification of that frustration. When really, if I had made it so it was more like Roland was, let's say, like a more dramatic character, somebody who was, more tragic, somebody who didn't want to be what he is, but because of circumstances, because of the way the government created him, he had no choice. I mean, when you are basically created for the sole purpose of weakening one person, any semblance of a normal life, any future you may have as a normal person is just gone. What if Roland had made this deal not out of malice, but out of desperation? What if he was just some, like maybe even a D or an F-list hero who had no real credentials, except maybe he was tougher, but he was down and out. He had no money and needed something, so he went along with this government experiment, in an act of desperation, or last hurrah kind of thing. If he died, he died. If he didn't, hey, he had a purpose. But now he finds himself stuck in this role. Like, if I had made his character more of that, so therefore it wasn't necessarily like I said, whenever Roland and Clark would talk, Clark would be like, oh, it wouldn't have been a realistic way for Cooper to channel his own personal frustrations at me personally. But again, pardon the phrase, but hindsight is 2020, and now I deal with these a lot better. I mean, if there is an overpowered character, I'll straight up just tell the person playing him, look, you got to take something away. You got to do something because I'm not letting this guy onto the field. Because yeah, sometimes I make mistakes. When a guy wants to put a keen enchantment on a sword, 4 times to where he crits on a 15, 15 to 20, and this sword just happens to do all this damage because it's also enchanted with all kinds of other crap, and this guy is just critting on every single time he hits. Yeah, I might tell him, no, we're not doing that. But it's a learning curve. GMing is always a learning curve. This was especially hard. This was a particularly tall hurdle for me to jump over, but I did. I could have done it. Maybe that leap could have been a little bit more graceful, but it happened. And like I said, it's not like I lost a friend out of it. Cooper and I do still get along. Whatever weird crap that he and I had, that's gone. We're good friends now. It's just that's just what I mean, though. It is easy it's easy as a GM, especially when you have really good friends in your group. If somebody pitches a character who may be a little bit more of a handful than you want, again, they're your friend. Don't be afraid to say, hey, dude, maybe not have this guy who with AC of 40. I mean, you're only level 7, man. Let's tone it down a little bit. Or if they're just if they're just a guy who you invited to the table, and he is deliberately going out of his way to make this game as painful for you as possible. Hey, well, the great thing about our country is you have the right to point to your door and say, you see that door over there? It looks really, really nice on the other side of it. How about you take your stuff and you go take a look at it? Oh, and don't come back in, though. It's just, like I said, GMing will always be a learning curve. You'll always encounter obstacles, and I would say about maybe 40% of the time, these obstacles come from outside of the game. And obviously, it's not always about, scheduling. It's not always about, players having conflict with one another. Sometimes you just have a character made who had the sole purpose of making things difficult for you. Don't be like me back then. Don't just shrug and just say, all right, fine, I'll just go through it and just kind of, make stuff up as I go and hope that's something, throw as many stuff at the board as possible and hope something sticks. No. You nip that in the bud immediately. Because not only will your campaign and your adventure thank you, but all the other players will too. Because, Silverback and Frostbite, they were heroes. They wanted to fight bad guys. They wanted to be cool. They wanted to forge their own legacy. And it's kind of hard to do that when you have a guy who is legitimately indestructible and super strong. The best way I would describe it is the end of, I guess I have to say, Joss Whedon's Justice League, when Superman shows up to the final battle and just starts doing every job that is there by himself, making Flash, Batman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg completely insignificant. Oh, Aquaman too, I guess. All completely insignificant when fighting, what's his name? I wanted to say Beowulf. Steppenwolf. That was kind of how it was. Like, the first adventure, the first game, that's how it was. And I'm not going to I'm very, very tempted to go into a rant about Superman, but I will just say this: overpowered characters aren't fun. They aren't cool. They are lame, and they're made just so the person who made them can feel good about themselves. I'm not saying that's Superman. I'm saying that's Clark. But anyway. 2021. Man, it was a hard year, 2020. I I hope that everybody out there is safe. Everyone out there is doing all right. I know that especially with the shutdowns and all that, that it can be a little hard to have have optimism. I myself have encountered some hardships because of the pandemic, but you got you got friends. You got people out there who care about you. I know I'm going a little off subject here, but I feel like this is something that people need to hear. I I created PDR as a way to escape from the problems of the outside world, but I just want you guys all to know, even if I can't see your faces, even if I don't know what you look like, I don't even know your names, just know that I care about you, and I hope that you come out of this smelling like roses. Alright, everybody. I've been Master Mimic, and I hope you all have an amazing day. Stay safe out there. Chin up. It's gonna get better. Darkest before the dawn, all that stuff. Alright. Have a good one, everybody.